Good afternoon. Welcome to the After Service Podcast, a production of Open Door Community Church. Tried to be formal. How's that?
Good morning, afternoon, or whenever it is that you're hearing us, and I'm so glad you're joining us. And on this definitely a fall day here in Oregon, it's nice.
Yeah,
rained a little bit, sunshine a little bit.
I saw there was the potential for some thunder in the forecast, so I'm always hopeful when it comes to that, just because it's not something that happens very much out here. I think we talked about it during the service the other day about, because you never really grew up in an area where you had any good storms. And I remember when Vanessa and I started to date, I talked about the great thunder and lightning storms we get in Wyoming, and then she reminded me that she spent a bunch of time in Daytona, Florida, which is the lightning strike capital of the world or something. Is that right, Suze?
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
So
I would think Texas would have a lot of pretty big storms too.
Yeah,
but,
no, they get some pretty good ones, some pretty good crackers, and like when we go there, it's like one of the things that Sam and I hope for is that we get a good thunder and lightning storm. You know, just something that we can like hang out on the porch and just enjoy. Yeah. You know. We just don't get those very much, and it is awe-inspiring. Yep. You got some wind there. Yeah, it's blowing over there.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, Oregon weather is usually pretty mellow all year, really. I mean, even the winters aren't really that hard, and the summers usually aren't that bad. We're just kind of right in the middle.
We get the seasons. I think it's... Yeah, it works. I don't know if you had this when you were a kid, but I remember they used to, in the Oregon stores... All right.
I'm back.
No, you weren't gone. It was me.
Okay.
I suppose there'll just be this weird blank spot in the middle. We never stopped officially streaming. So anyway, I switched over. Right. We actually have 2 internet providers at our house because one is is faster, but it's really unreliable. And so we have one that is really reliable, not super fast, that Vanessa can use because it's really important for her.
Not to drop ever. Yeah.
Not to drop. So I switched to hers. So I think she's eating lunch. So I think we're okay stealing some of her bandwidth. Right. But I don't even remember what I was talking about. The coloring book, Oregon coloring book. It only came with 2 crayons, brown and gray. So it was gray for everybody here on this side of the mountains and brown for everybody on the other side of the mountains. And I always thought that was funny.
I would have think green. When I always come back from to Oregon, I gray. Yeah, the skies are so low and so gray. True, but I also think green. There's so much green here. But,
yeah, I think that's more of a joke than anything. But you know, I have to say that, you know, I love the rain because of what it does. You know, we don't get the green without the gray.
True.
So I'm okay with rain.
Do you love the rain?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think we talked. I grew up. We played in the rain. We were just out getting muddy and playing and doing dumb stuff all the time. So rain wasn't that big a deal.
No.
Yeah. So
you like a rainy night, is what you're saying?
I love a rainy night. I love the way that. Okay.
But it's interesting. I go to like Disneyland or something like that, and you can tell the people who are from a place like in Oregon because, you know, if it has just the slightest sprinkle, most people leave. But then there's a few of us who are like, this isn't even rain.
Right. Yeah. No,
What's the problem here? Why are we stopping?
we're the ones that are wearing flip flops, shorts, and a hoodie, when it's
Right.
40 degrees outside,
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but we were talking about on Sunday, because we probably should get to the sermon at some
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
about anger. That's where Paul is at, as he talks about how to be more like Jesus. And I made the basic idea that anger is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to be either like God or like the devil, because both get angry. Anger can be fine. It often is very destructive. And so, second, it's an opportunity to just kind of stop and figure out what's going on, because it's a secondary emotion. Why are you angry? You don't want to give the devil an opportunity to control yourself, to control you. You don't want to give it. You want to just think through why you're angry. And then finally, the point was that it's an opportunity to trust, to give something to God and let him deal with something that really gets you angry. Because you don't want to hold on to it for very long, which is the idea of don't let the sun go down in your anger. It's not necessarily you have to be reconciled immediately. It's that you don't want to let anger go without addressing it for very long. So those were my basic points.
I found myself kind of going off in these little splits.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah. So just the idea, if we could just start with like, don't let the sun go down on your anger. I think that's that's one of those that is either misunderstood or is reframed as a justification for things. I actually mentioned to Vanessa the idea that it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't mean that there has to be some kind of reconciliation before you go to bed.
Right.
In some marital relationships, that becomes, an opportunity to basically bully a person into agreeing with you, or
Sure does.
But another thing that I thought of related to that is that if you are dysregulated and angry, then reconciliation may not be an option. So how do you get yourself to a place where you're just okay without resolution or reconciliation? And so when I think about don't let the sun go down on your anger, it's like, well, don't go to bed angry. So what do you need to do for yourself? And part of that, like you said, is maybe that's an opportunity to give that over to God. Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I think about the way that we get so easily spun up in today's world that sometimes letting go of that anger means you give yourself the opportunity to revisit that in a better frame of mind. And
Absolutely.
You've spoken about that so many times, the idea that feeling like you have to be right and having to force the issue or whatever. But when you give it space, maybe you see it better, or you with a better perspective. So yeah, I guess there's just an opportunity. Like if you're really worked up about something, how can you let go of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's I think also the idea of taking a moment to, because it's quoting Psalm 4, where David is saying, just stop and think about, why are you upset? What's underneath of this? For me, when I get angry, it's helpful for me to think, okay, am I really just afraid? Is that really what this is? Okay, well, that'll help me deal with the anger. It's like, because what's happening is I'm afraid. Okay, let's think through, why am I angry? Why am I afraid? What is it? How do I need to deal with that rather than the anger? Because you're right, it's difficult to figure out, what do you do with anger? But I think figure out what's going on underneath, or like, why am I so triggered by this? Well, maybe it's not even that at all. It's something else. Maybe it's just grieving. Oh, that's right. It's the death of my mom's. It's my mom's death anniversary. That's what it is. I'm grieving and I didn't realize it.
Yeah,
that helps to me.
There was another thing as I go through my little mental list of things that kind of ticked for me. You discussed kind of in a generalized way, a difference between how the genders may respond.
But it's
Yeah, and I agree. As you were saying it, I'm like, there's a part of me that goes, "Oh, let's be careful," and then I'm like, "No, that's pretty true." And so please don't beat me up. However, I did think about myself in a recent opportunity that I took to respond, to allow my anger to come out in as silence.
it can happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I had, and it's silly, but as I reflect on it, I felt kind of, I was convicted about some poor judgment on my part, and it's very, very simple. Oftentimes, I will go pick up Sam from school. He gets out around 3, and that's like an opportunity for us to just chat for a minute, or we'll go do something. On this particular day, I drove to the school and sat there for a while, and he never showed up. And I'm like, "Where are you?" And he's like, "I'm on the bus." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just sitting here. Like, why didn't he tell me?" And I was annoyed. I felt disrespected, just, and so when I got home and I saw him, I just didn't talk to him. I just kind of tried to avoid him. No, it wasn't I tried to avoid him. It was almost like I was trying to be in his space and actively not engaging with him.
And that's different than giving yourself a timeout.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I want you to understand that I'm not talking to you. And then at some point, like Vanessa asked Sam, like, why he rode the bus. And Sam's like, "Well, Dad said he had a meeting and it wouldn't be out in time for him to pick me up. So I thought I was supposed to take the bus." I'm like, "Oh, I did mention that, but that was a meeting for tomorrow, not today. Oh, this is just a misunderstanding. He wasn't disrespecting me. It was just, we were both on different." And it's just like, sometimes our anger is just, we are aligning ourselves with a narrative that works for us for whatever reason. It makes us feel justified, respected, or whatever. That fear,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot to get out of your own narrative and then to see things more openly. And that's what I needed in that time, was, instead of thinking, "Hey, Sam's a good kid. When has he ever really been disrespectful or acted irresponsibly?" And
maybe I'm remembering this, right?
Yeah, maybe this would have been something I would have done. Maybe I was projecting or something. But that was something where I'm like, "Oh gosh, yeah, I screwed up." Thankfully, it wasn't that big a deal. It was much bigger in my own mind than it ever was, like, in reality.
On the other hand, I mean, I suppose, well, okay, there's so many things to say. One, yes, generalizations are generalizations. That doesn't mean it's true in every single case or every single person. Okay. They're just generally kind of like broad strokes to kind of give you a sense of what's possible. But yeah, of course, there's someone I know who that is his primary way of expressing anger, is to be silent. And so when he stops talking, you're like, "Oh yeah, he's really ticked off."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's a passive aggressive. It's doing something not to step back to give yourself a chance to reflect and be mindful about what's going on. That's a good thing. That's patience. No. It's, you're doing it to kind of get them to show them, "I'm really ticked off at you." Yeah, that's not the same thing.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do we have?
Truth.
Say again.
Oh, just say, yeah, and that's the issue of truth that because I talked about, figure what is true in this case. We've talked a little bit about truth, and having somebody else speak into your life. People, having somebody else go, "Okay, is it possible, Joe, that's not the correct way that's actually what's happening here?" It's helpful to have people to speak into your life with those things, to maybe you're not seeing the world accurately. So that's all.
Yeah. I think I grew up in a household where anger was not expressed generally in the moment. You know, there was a lyric from a song that really resonated with me. It's like we learned it's best not to kick under the table. We kick under our breath instead. The idea that we would hold on to some resentment, and it would come out later in different ways, or
it's not resolved.
Right, or it would be, it would be exploded. Right, it would, and that's a bit of how I work. Is I try to keep things low key and easy going, and then, as you're aware, you've been my friend for a long time, that there's a point, a tipping point, where it goes from Joe's doing okay to Joe is not okay.
Yeah,
and it's, you know, a growing edge, something that I'm always trying to do better. That, you know, maybe it's better for me to express a little bit of annoyance in the moment and be corrected than to hold on to that and then create, again, a narrative around this that starts feeding on itself. I'm really good at that. Like,
yeah,
you know, about fairness, and this isn't fair. I start adding points up, and that leads to an explosion or an unhealthy encounter.
And maybe this is a good point to say the general point of, there is so much to have been said on this topic. There's a lot that I could have said that needs to be said, and there's no way in a single sermon or a podcast that we're going to deal with all the permutation. It's not possible. There's so many different nuances of how we respond, and this is why my basic idea of, wait a minute, you need to, if you find that you're an angry person, you need to work on it, talk to people, think through, because there's a lot of different ways people respond to it. There are a lot of nuances, and there have been times in my life where I get really angry. Currently, not at all. I don't struggle with anger, but there's been times, and it's been helpful for people to work in my life for that.
Yeah, there's something that we've probably mentioned on the podcast before. Maybe it hasn't been for a while. I actually thought you were going to mention it on Sunday. Is the idea of flooding?
Oh, yeah.
Which is just
I did kind of.
Oh, you did, but you just didn't name it.
I didn't name it. No, I didn't name it. I said that, you know, when people are really emotional, there's no way you can have a rational conversation.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
And there's a physiological piece to that where like the fight versus flight, the blood in your brain it leaves this spot and goes back here, and there's not rational thought occurring there. Rational thought. You know.
Nope.
And I think for me, again, being able to put a name to that feeling is really important. And it also goes into like when I'm interacting with people, let's say online, or, you know, I see people interact with each other online, you can tell when somebody is not responding in a really rational way, where they feel impassioned and justified, but they're not really open to rational thought. And
they're not.
Another reason, if don't let the sun go down on your anger, allow that to dissipate so that you can look at it a bit more rationally. And it's been a really helpful tool, I think, for you and definitely for me, in encounters with people where we can recognize, oh, I'm not where I need to be. I'm not thinking right. I need to give myself a timeout.
Yeah. Right, which is an active thing, not a passive thing. You're choosing to slow down. I mean, the current word would probably be mindful of, you know, practice some mindfulness. Think about what's really happening in your mind, in your heart, giving yourself the space to correctly respond. Because if you act so often, anger, and we've kind of beat around the bush with this, and you said it a moment ago, anger is a motivator to do something, even if it's that doing something is silence, but it triggers that fight or flight thing. So if you could put the brakes on long enough to think through, why are you angry and how would be the appropriate response, oh, you'll save yourself and a lot of people in your life a lot of hurt.
I really appreciated your illustration as you were discussing Jesus and how he was either angry or not angry, or how he may, well, specifically the cleansing the temple. I think when people talk about Jesus got angry, almost invariably that is what they point to. And for you to pull that up and go, doesn't say anywhere that he's angry.
It doesn't, which this week I thought, oh, that's true. No, it's not.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Well, I appreciated how you said maybe he was there the day before and he was angry that day and then went, I'm just going to take a step back. And then he came back and was like, okay, I think the appropriate thing to do is the following. And he's turning over the tables or whatever that, maybe anger is a motivator for you to take action, but not necessarily in that moment, but to go, right. Why is this making me angry? And is it righteous anger? And if so, then what's the most appropriate way to respond to it?
Yeah.
I think Jesus did that.
I think he did. I think he modeled that for us. Yeah, and one of the things that's along the same line that makes me think about is one of the things I've been just really working hard on personally lately is this idea of that I can only control myself and my reactions, my responses. I have absolutely no control whatsoever on what other people do. Zero. The only thing I can control is what I do. So in my mind, I don't know if I've talked about this in the podcast or with you, but the image to me is a pinball machine. Mm-hmm. The ball is bouncing all over the place, which is a person doing whatever they do. And the only thing I get to control is that moment where I can hit it with a flipper. That fraction of a second. But then I make whatever my response is, good, bad, whatever it is. And then I have to go, well, let's see what happens.
Well,
because I can't do anything.
Well, like to restate that, if I'm the flipper, I mean, to me, it's a bit of a violent example, but
I momentarily interact with them.
You're right. Another person is that ball, and they're coming your direction, and you have a momentary interaction, and you can control how you engage in that moment. Yeah. And that is the extent of your influence. Is there. You don't get to follow it around beating it with the flipper, beating that person with a flipper. It's like, bam, okay. And it also works really from a spiritual perspective. The idea that we're trying to influence people. We're trying to convince people in a healthy way to acknowledge who Christ is, and that we can influence people in a moment. And if we do it the right way, they may or may not respond as we hope they do.
Sure.
And accepting the fact that it's the Spirit that is doing the work.
Right.
That goes into the trust, right? The Spirit is doing that. So let's make sure that those momentary interactions, that we make the most of them. We tap the flipper at the right time. And then if it doesn't work out, we did what we could in that moment.
We did. That's it. And that's it. And for me, that's it. Because a lot of my anger and frustration comes out of the sense that I can affect things more than I think I can. Mm-hmm. I believe I can. No. All I got is that momentary interaction, and that's it. And which kind of brings me to this last part of how the gospel affects it. Is like, I feel like so much of the time, for me personally, the fears, the griefs, the feeling disrespected, a lot of that stuff, if I remember what the gospel says about who I am in Jesus, I don't need respect from these people. I don't need to have significance. I already have it. So I get worked up about worrying about how the country's going or the world's going, and I get angry at that. It's like, but why? I already have that stuff, and I have a Savior who's in control. Maybe I need to just stop and let him deal with that, or believe what he says about me.
Yeah. I think that is maybe one of the single largest challenges that we have as Christians here living in the world today is the desire to, to have some measure of control. It almost suggests a lack of belief that God is in control himself and will make.
Yeah.
It's the anger that I see people express over certain things that are happening, or, had a pseudo political conversation at church on Sunday that I did not invite. And, I sense this person's anger about a political situation. And it's just like, I wonder why you're so angry that
Right.
you are responding in this way. And I think a lot of it goes back to what you said at the very beginning of this, is there's a fear there. And I think it's a fear that, that God really is in control, and that he needs us and our righteous indignation or our anger, our actions to bring heaven to earth, or
Right. Exactly. Right. He's not going to judge it or bring mercy, whatever he chooses in his wisdom and his righteousness. And yeah, I do. I felt that a lot, especially on political issues, but I suppose even in personal ones. Do you really think Jesus is involved and got this or not? And I think a lot of times underneath of it, the answer is no, I don't think we do. We will say we believe that, but we don't. We don't act like that. I know I do. That's what I get upset about it sometimes.
Yeah. There's definitely been times where I'm like, there's a sense of despair. Like, it's falling apart. What are we going to do about this? And whatever it is, it could be just about anything,
What do we do?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need to do anything about it, or just respond and let Jesus deal with it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just important to show up and be present and not try to have any kind of control or, you know.
Your responses. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I can't control whether or not, there's a war going on, or who's president, or, none of that. I mean, I have my responses to do, and it's not like sin is not going to go unpunished. Of course it is. Right? We believe that, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So I think about James saying, the righteousness, man's anger does not achieve God's righteousness. No, it doesn't. We think it does. Or Paul in Romans, where he says, leave room for God's wrath. Mm-hmm. Let him, don't take revenge yourself. Don't bring justice to yourself. It doesn't say do justice, and it says, love mercy and act justly yourself. But you don't need to bring justice. That's not your job. Your job is to act, is to do your best, and let God take righteousness in his own. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It
is.
It's real hard. And for, I don't want to pretend that there haven't been times when I would have chewed off my own, arm, for the sake of getting revenge, let's say,
Yes.
That, I feel it's like with kids sports, when I see a kid that I coach, like being hurt or treated unfairly or something, there's a part of me that was bullied as a kid that just wants to come in and make it right, and not in a healthy way, and then
you're not a judge, are you?
Oh my gosh, it's hard.
It is. Which, again, to wrap it up, this is why you have to have people in your life speaking truth into your life, calling you out, helping you think this stuff through. That's why if you have anger issues, go to counseling. Get good people in your life that are going to help you with this, because it is a fire, and the devil will use that anger for your life and the lives of people around you.
All right. Good chat. We're about the end of time. Anything else you want to add?
Nah, deal with your anger. It's not a bad thing. Just think about it. Why are you angry? That's it. Sunday is going to be, we're completely switching gears to a completely different idea. Rest and work and purpose. Yeah, I'm excited about Sunday. It'll be a great thing.
I'll be looking forward to it. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to say. We'll talk after we wrap up, but folks, looking forward to seeing you. Thank you for dealing with our little technical snafu earlier. Otherwise, see you on Sunday.
See you on Sunday. Take care.